Well, hello everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. I have two amazing guests. I have Marguerite Bennett, award-winning New York Times best-selling author. I have Marc Silvestri, also award-winning legend within the comic book industry. Both of you here to talk about Witchblade. I am so excited to talk about Witchblade. I love Witchblade. I love the darkness. They've been a big part of my life for a very long time, and so I cannot wait to jump in. But first, maybe we'll start with you, Marguerite. How are you doing, and how is everything going with that first issue being released and the fans' reception of that first issue? Because it was at the top. Like, we don't get sales all the time anymore, but we know that it was one of the top-selling comics that week when it came out. So I think a lot of people are pretty excited.
It was an enormous honor, and honestly, I've been so hidden away in my little witch cottage, and just working, doing my work and staying offline, and I'm really not plugged into the social media conversations, the websites as much, and so I did actually my first event, show, signing, anything in 5 years, like since before COVID, was down at San Diego, and I came down, for one day, one signing, one interview, and that was it, and I was out. And so Marc got to be the person to tell me how well all of this had done and how happy everyone was and what the reviews were. And so, I was just in, frankly, like ignorance. And so to find out there in San Diego, as we're signing, that was the first time that I saw the variant covers, and it was just an embarrassment of riches. So to be, around all these wonderful people, and I got to see Scott Snyder, who's my mentor. I hadn't seen him in 5 years, and so it was just so delightful, to get to have that homecoming, frankly, and to be welcomed like that, by the industry again.
No, absolutely. I think issue one is such a great jumping on point for someone who really hasn't had that last 30 years of Witchblade like a lot of us have. So it's perfect jumping in point for someone who's never read it, but also for someone who grew up with it. It's still very much relatable, which, as a fan, right? Selfishly, that's what you want, right? I don't want Sara being anything else but what she is. And you did such a great job of protecting her, protecting the storyline while still making it wide open for new fans to jump in. Marc, I don't know how you felt about that first issue. I assume you're very happy with it, but after all these years to relaunch and to have it, I mean, my comic book was sold out within an hour. I think an hour and a half, it was gone. So.
No, it's and thank you. We really appreciate it. Those are kind words, and I think you just encapsulated my feelings right in there, because we were thrilled just developing this. Especially once Marguerite jumped on. After our however many years ago it was, 4 years ago, our meeting in a car on the way to a hotel at a convention. Sat myself down next to her because I recognized her. It's like, okay, she was on that short list of writers we wanted here. Gave her the elevator pitch in the car before we got to the hotel. We shook hands, the deal was done. And it's been just wonderful ever since then. And yes, wildly proud of the work the creative team and the editorial team has done on Witchblade, the marketing team, both in Top Cow and with Image Comics as well. Everyone just
Giuseppe
did a
bang-up
job. Giuseppe
Incredible.
is amazing of an artist.
It's incredible artist.
Yeah.
Incredible.
He really is. And this combination of Giuseppe and
I'm sorry, internet.
Along with Troy Petrie on the letters, we got the writing, which is just beyond spot on, combined with the artwork that blends perfectly with it. I've been doing this long enough to know that this is not always the case. The colors that blend perfectly with the pencils, and the lettering that just brings it all together and puts those words exactly how they should be in the comic. The vibe of everything, everyone's hitting their marks so perfectly. The reviews say it all. The book is well received. Obviously your words, your kind words. We love to hear that stuff, because what you described in the first issue as a welcoming point is critical, and it was critical from day one. Look, if we're going to bring Sara back, it has to be user friendly, not just to new readers, but to all the fans that have supported us. I hate, and this happens way too often, in other media, but I hate when someone comes in and completely disrespects the fans that made that franchise what it is, right? By going, screw you, I have a vision. And this is, you will like my vision. It's like, no, it doesn't really work that way, right? It's like, number one, Marguerite and I are both fans, right? So that helps, right? Top Cow is very small. Image is relatively very small. Image, of course, is made up by creators. We understand because we're fans. Everyone that works for Top Cow, comic book fans, and we get it, and we just understand this is what it should be, right? And this is a beloved character in Sara Pezzini with a great concept in the Witchblade, right? And we always remembered. This is one of the things that I thought was so beautiful with Marguerite and having conversations with her. She understands the order of that. It's Sara Pezzini, then it's the Witchblade, right? Because without her, this means nothing, right? And that's what the fans always responded to, whether they knew it or not, right? It's like it's subliminally, it works in there. They're putting the pieces together. It's about Sara Pezzini, and she has this Witchblade. The world is built around her. Right. And I think that was one of the keys for us when we were introducing this. Like, let's introduce Sara Pezzini to the new fans who've never heard of her before. Fantastic. That's terrific. That's easy to do, relatively. The trick, which Marguerite pulled off brilliantly, was also make it so that old fans like yourself, not to mean that you're old, but I do see some gray in there. I'm just saying.
It's definitely gray, yes.
But for people that have supported Witchblade and comics in general, make sure that they recognize her, they respond to her. She has a new voice, and it's a brave new world. A few things have changed in the 30 years, almost 30 years, 25 years, whatever, since she showed up. Let's acknowledge that. Let's not insult people and say, oh, things are the same. We have this new character, this new voice in Sara Pezzini that is completely relatable to today and completely recognizable as to who she was. So all the fans who've been sticking around for a long time, this is my Sara Pezzini, but she's even more, she's even more human than she ever was, right? And now we're free to tell all these brand new stories, right? So that we're going to reward the old time readers with, we're not just rehashing everything. And all the new readers get just as entertained because they're not familiar with it, right? So it's like, if we pulled that off like it sounds like you said we did, then we did our jobs.
Yeah, I think so. We even got a really cool picture of Ian at the end, which brought back a lot of memories too. So if you've read the first run of Witchblade, you'll know who I'm talking about, Nottingham, which I thought was really cool too. So knowing that some of these other characters that have been a big part of the storytelling within Witchblade being reintroduced to new readers too is very exciting as well. For you, Marguerite, you've had already in a short time some pretty big titles, whether it's Bombshells, whether it's X-Men, whether we're working for a large publisher like a DC and then coming over to Top Cow. Can you tell like a difference in the freedom that you have? Obviously the respect that you have for the character, but the freedom that you have to be able to kind of tell your story the way you want to. And how has that helped you in that storytelling?
Oh, no, absolutely. So I mean, there are gradients even within large companies like DC. When I was on Batwoman, it was working very closely, with the other writers and what they were doing with characters, and so it was collaborative. But there was a very concrete vision that each individual creative team had for their book, and so there wasn't as much hands-on work with one another. It was more being informed, that this was someone and you wanted to be sympathetic and helpful to their story. And so you would make, concessions and allowances or add things that supported it, but you didn't get to spend quite as much time with people. The teams were still quite separate, as I guess what I'm getting at. With things like Bombshells, it was sort of carte blanche to be as angry, gay, and feminist as I wanted to be. So that was quite nice. But then with Witchblade, as I've, said in other interviews and will say many more times in my life, I've been a fan of Sarah since I was 7 years old. My friend Travis Covey, who was only a few years older than I was, would give me his discarded comics, like after he was done with them. And so I would get them frankly, when I was quite too young for them, like, like Spawn #2 was like the first comic I
Ooh.
ever read.
Seven? Oh, okay. That explains so much.
And
Yeah. 7 might be a little young for this spawn, maybe. I don't know.
Um, but I have just had such a love for the character for so long, for the world for so long, and I really, never dreamed that with cooking up this story that I'd be working, so closely with Mark, and just be able to like bounce ideas off each other, and create something that like is harmonious and ambitious, and pays homage to like all the bombastic, outrageous, outlandish, signature things from the classic series. It really disheartens me, when people try to do adaptations and feel that by modernizing things, they can't have any fun, or they must conform to like strict realism, like this is Shakespeare at all times. And it's like, look, we have Shakespearean themes. They liked their dirty jokes. They liked their action. They liked their, family intrigues. But they don't have to sound like they shit marble. Like, we can have fun. We can be human, we can be organic and messy and sweaty and complicated. And so I feel that the organic nature of working on Witchblade really is part and parcel of, what an organic character Sarah is, and how, the strength of the Witchblade or the curse of the Witchblade is that it's like a living, growing, evolving thing at all times. So that was my thesis statement.
I love it. I love it. And you brought up a really important point that, Mark, I've heard you on several occasions talk about, and that is collaboration and how important that has always been in your career. And I've also heard you tell stories of the people that you've gotten to work with, whether it was on Conan with Roy Thomas or Chris Claremont on X-Men. I mean, it goes on and on, but that collaboration that you had was so important to you. And you brought that to Top Cow. And then for Marguerite to talk about how that's such a big part of her ability to be free to tell that story. What does that mean to you for her to respond to that desire for that kind of collaboration that I know is so important for you as a leader?
Oh, it's everything, honestly. And one of the things that I bring to the table is that I come from the creative side, right? Like all the other image guys, we became business people by default. We kind of had to do that. So my roots are in just being creative. That's what I love to do. No, I'm going to run this company too. Okay, that's cool. But I come alive when I'm having Zoom calls with someone like Marguerite, and like she was saying before, the ideas just start to fly, right? And it's like she'll say something that triggers us, something that I say, something that triggers us, something that she says, and just you start to build these like just really cool things, right? Where we have to kind of pull ourselves back because, like I said, we're fans, right? And we go, oh, then we'll do this, and then we'll do this. Yeah, okay, that's issue 30. But we bring ourselves back and just kind of go as fans and creative people. Okay, what's the best way to tell her story? And Marguerite, in a much more eloquent way, it describes Sarah and her world as a person, and it absolutely comes through in the printed comic, right? So I'm thrilled when I come across someone that we can have different ideas, and that's how things become cool and great, right? When you have different ideas, but we both have the same goal, right? So at the end of the day, it's about what is the best version of these ideas. And to me, that's what collaboration means, right? You're both working, or whatever the number of people are working, for the same common goal, right? And I've been privileged in my life a few times to have people that I was very happy to collaborate with. Not even if I didn't talk with them very much, we just kind of like, I understood what they were writing and they understood what I was drawing. And it was great, but since Image and Top Cow started, and I was able to have a studio and work very closely with people face to face. Now we do it Zoom to Zoom, but face to face, I really started to realize how valuable that was and how critical it is to create something meaningful, right? So I absolutely cherish my time with Marguerite, not just because she's a great person, but she's also just a brilliant creator and writer. So yeah, that's kind of, for me, especially since I've been doing this for so long, got me some gray in there too, obviously, but yeah, that's pretty much everything.
Yeah,
and like
comes across. Please, Marguerite, please, yeah.
Yeah, and forgive me, I know that my internet has lagged and I've cut people off because it looks like other people are done and are quiet, and then I'm sure I'm just like sea
Not at
lioning
all.
their discussion, so I apologize. But no, like the other work that I'm doing right now, is like prose and screenplays and things. And so in that case, it's like go off and return with a manuscript in 3 months, and we'll see you then. And that's kind of it. And then so it feels like such a vibrant lifeline to wake up every morning with like one of Giuseppe Cafaro's pages in my inbox. And they're so enchanted. And yeah, so it really does, make me feel, I feel like I'm going through like what Sarah's going through, where it's like, oh, I am tethered to civilization again.
And that's
Yeah, I
actually a
mean,
good point, because our business, it's very, you're a lone wolf,
Yeah.
right? When you're creating, whether you're a writer or an artist, which is why the studio was so fantastic, because you'd walk in at any hour and 3 o'clock in the morning, and you'd have Joe Benitez, Mike Turner, Dave Finch, all doing their thing, right? So we have a tendency to be amongst ourselves, and we get a little bit crazy for that. So I love having the interaction with other human beings that do what I do and can sympathize sometimes. So I think that's important. So yeah, like I feel the same way, Marguerite. Like when Sarah gets that tether, that lifeline to like the real world, it's important.
absolutely, yeah. And Mark, can you talk a little bit about Mike Turner?
Mhm.
Obviously he was lost at a young age, but the impact that he had on Witchblade in particular was, I mean,
Yeah.
second to none, right? One of the folks that you work with to create this amazing IP. Can you kind of talk about the impacts? I saw at the very end of the story, there is a page where you kind of give your feelings in that last paragraph of that dedication to Mike Turner. Can you kind of talk a little bit to that? He has I mean, the fan base is still very strong for his
Well,
work.
very. And his artistic influence among
Yeah.
professionals is still very strong. And like, Marguerite will attest, being a fan of Witchblade for all those years. I mean, Mike, um, not only was he a great collaborator story-wise, I think he contributed more to the story than people realize. He wasn't just an artist for Witchblade, and I worked very closely with him on developing, the look of certain things, and just let him go and do his thing. Because I'll be honest with you, and I've been doing the studio and working with new talent for a long time. I don't think I've ever seen anyone get so good so quickly as Mike did, right? And he did create the template, and that template slash bar is incredibly high that he set. Mike always had this very unique vision and unique aesthetic that just stood out, and he had this just natural sense of what comic books were, even though when we first met him, he was like a waiter. It's like he was just trying to get into comics. It's like, I don't even want to tell you about his first samples that I saw. Like, what are you doing in the studio? But it was like so amazing how fast he just got like on a whole different level. But we're eternally grateful for not just the visual language that he established for Sarah, uh, and not simply us having to strive to keep meeting that bar that he set so high. I mean, it's not an enviable task to follow that man. And like you said, his influence is still out there, and people still love his work after all these years. I do. I see his stuff pop up on my timeline because he's got so many fans, and it's like obviously there's a big Witchblade connection in there, and it's like pop up. Oh my god, that's right. Look at that page. The elegance of it. It just was just always on point. So yeah, knowing Mike and knowing him as a friend was invaluable. Working with him was invaluable. Seeing what he brought um, to our industry, the enthusiasm for what he did, the ideas that he brought, um, it was a privilege. It was a privilege to call him friend. It was a privilege to hang out with him um, at all hours. And yeah, I think we all miss him. The industry misses him. And yeah, I think about Mike often, especially when I do these shows, because I see so many books with him in there, and it's like, oh yeah. But yeah, it was once in a generational talent, if that, even. could be even more than that. You know, people like him just don't come along that often. We were privileged, honored, and happy to have him. And I don't believe that Witchblade would have been as enormous as it was without his input.
I think, Marguerite, you and I can attest as fans of Witchblade and reading the comics and seeing that art, the impact that it had. I mean, it's such a visual medium, right? Obviously, you have to have good storytelling, but man, the art tells such a big portion of that story. And if the art and the bubbles aren't matching, as a reader, you could tell immediately. And so I think we were spoiled by his art. So I'm glad that you were able to share that, because I only got to see the results of his work, but you got to know him as a person. I think it's important that people see that side as well, and the impact that he had on this particular character. And then when we look at what you're doing, Marguerite, with Giuseppe, I mean, you could see those two things coming together, and you could tell that there's real collaboration and real care for the character. And obviously, Giuseppe seems like a huge fan of Witchblade as well, because that certainly comes across in the artwork. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit, Marguerite, about your collaboration with Giuseppe? Because that, from a reader's perspective, that is one of the most important things to a great comic, I feel, is the writer and the artist coming together and having that great collaboration. And when it doesn't happen, you could tell. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, I mean, the reality is, right, there's so many amazing artists from all around the world. A lot of times you're working with an artist that maybe doesn't speak English because they're in another country. So there's just so many more things that you kind of have to play around with in order to get that collaboration. But can you talk about how your collaboration is with Giuseppe?
Sure. You know, Mark will laugh because he gets to actually see my scripts, and you're just gonna have to put up with my descriptions of them. But I do have a tendency to send in these like Dickensian length scripts because they are packed with like reference imagery, you know, because I know that we're working cross-culturally, and so, you know, it just helps to be like, let me put it this way. There was a series that I did a while ago where a character, you know, was supposed to like whip out like a torch and a pitchfork to like get ready to like, you know, join an angry mob. And English was the writer's second language, and so it was a pitchfork and a flashlight. And I loved it so much. I was like, ship it. This is beautiful. The character, like, you know. So it was like, it was perfect. It was in character, but I was like, I do want to avoid that for Witchblade though.
Yeah.
That was a happy accident there.
Yeah, happy accident. Yeah.
And I spend so much time thinking about, you know, every page is an individual piece. And you know, when I broke into comics, you know, I was fresh out of school. Like I spent my graduation, you know, on my smartphone, you know, trying to respond to editorial notes until it was Mike Martz, you know, asked like, okay, well, can you jump on a call real quick to go over this? And I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm actually about to walk up and get my degree. And he was like, Marguerite, go graduate, we'll talk Monday. Anyway, but that is to say, you know, I think you know, communication is so key, and you know, doing things that your artist wants to do. And so you know, I was very early in my career like taken in when I was a nobody, like by mostly artists. You know, so I learned their side of things, and like, those damn writers always doing this or doing that. And so I try to engineer my, again, admittedly enormous scripts to be like artist accessible. You know, like I always put like, you know, the number of panels that every page is going to include, so when they read it through, they can always already see how they're going to structure it in their head. I try and think of, you know, ways that like you know, so like in superhero or capes comics, you know, you really can't move the page or sell the page at a convention if the character is in civilian clothes. You need something identifying. So I would always find ways, you know, to have a character in costume, you know, for different reasons that the artist could sell the page or do double spreads because then they have a double sale, and things like that. And so sometimes, you know, I always try to tell him like, I'm giving you this, but like, please make it your own, or do what you want, or disregard. You know, because I throw in a lot of double page spreads, and you know, I spend a lot of time
90s.
like a post.
Yeah. If I don't take a comic from Image and have to hold it this way to read a double page, it's not an Image comic,
Yes,
right?
yes,
yes. Yeah, the other big thing is like, if I'm asking for you know, like a really complex panel or something unusual, I will draw it out in my terrible. I'm a writer for a reason.
It's
little
awesome.
stick figures, little stick figures.
It is awesome. The greatest stick figures you've ever seen. But you get it. You see what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
And Giuseppe turns it into a symphony,
Yeah.
you know,
Work
based
of
on
art.
my little doot, 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 you know.
And that's
I
another
love
thing
it.
that Marguerite understands, right? Because her scripts, if you printed them out on paper, I don't, because there's not that many trees in the world. Um, they're like this thick, right? But there's a reason for that. What Marguerite understands is that all the world building has to happen, but it has to happen behind the scenes, right? It's like you don't throw that at the reader. That's for you as the writer, right? And as the artist, the creative team. You need to know that universe, right? Because then you know how Sarah's going to react and act. Because rule number one is that the plot and the world itself only move and evolve because of the decisions your main character makes, right? That's it. That's it, right? Everything else is just fine. But you have to know that universe, right? If you're a gamer, you may never go play those, you're just playing a game. You don't want to get killed. You're running around. But people spend a lot of time building these worlds that you just kind of are feeling subliminally. The best genre movies out there can do the same thing, right? It's like you're looking at stuff almost peripherally, and you're absorbing in your head, but you're concentrating on what's important, which is your main character. Some people fail at this because they get obsessed with like how cool this thing is, right? That's something that Marguerite understands implicitly. So I don't mind these massive, computer destroying files that she sends with the incredible artwork, because I get what she's doing, right? I get it. She's building a world that you will never see.
Yeah.
Because in her mind, Sarah is a real person, right? That exists and is making real decisions, good and, in Sarah's case, very often bad decisions. But that's where the drama comes from, right? So I love that, and I'm a big fan of that. Like I have world building stuff, like reams of paper that no one will ever see, but I get it when I'm writing something. It's like, okay, I know that this is why this person is doing this, and the reader will get it without me like just having to concentrate on the world around the character, because it's there. It's there in the character's actions. Right?
And we've
and Witchblade's full of that.
And I've also told these embarrassing stories, before, but like I do when I'm stuck on like a character, I do role play around my house as that character. And with like their level of frustration or their level of, philosophy or intrigue or like the lens at which they look at the world. And so, when I'm sitting down, just to compose like a room that a character is in, it's like, well, why would they design this room this way? What am I trying to convey to the reader? But also what's true to the character. So, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, we see, a glimpse of Irons. And, his apartment, or his penthouse rather, is decorated in Art Deco style, which is very far removed from like the Baroque Rococo that we see him in the classic series. But it was the Art Deco was so structured and severe and has such sharp contrasting
cold, very cold.
Yes, it's very cold. And then, with the all of the vertical stripes, cutting through, it felt over and over like the bars of a cage. And so, whereas Sarah's is much more organic and Art Nouveau and flowing and, full of motion and femininity. And, so again, like, it's just like, okay, how do I structure the page like this? How do I choose, like, what is the decor in the background of Iron's penthouse? And so I spend time, like, researching each of these stupid things and then putting a reference in it for Giuseppe.
Yeah. and you see the end result. Giuseppe gets it, and it translated to the page.
Yeah. And fans that know those characters understand that is definitely who Irons is, right? In reality, that is what you want to try to portray with that particular character, because he is cold and he knows exactly what he wants, and he's willing to do almost anything to get it. And he has tried a lot of crazy things over the years to make that happen, right? Which I absolutely love. I'm wondering if we could kind of talk about just Top Cow in general, where it's at today. And this is for either of you, and where we see it to the end of the year. We know we got a Cyberforce issue 1, which was incredible. There's rumors that the Darkness is coming back. Like, there's all kinds of really cool things that we're reading kind of in chats and Reddit and stuff like that. I mean, last year, a lot of amazing titles from Top Cow just exploded. This year, we're seeing even more. Like I feel like the last 2, maybe 3 years, there's been this refocus on new stories, new titles, and now we're bringing back some of those titles that were the foundation of Top Cow, which is very exciting. I just got chills talking about that. That is very exciting for the brand itself. Can you kind of talk about what this year means to Top Cow and where it's going to take Top Cow in the next few years?
Oh yeah, well, thank you for that. And you're exactly right. We have, oh man, I can't even calculate how many fresh ideas we have. But the one thing that over the years that all of us who do conventions or read the chats and all that, it's like, oh, what about Witchblade? What about the darkness? What about Cyberforce? And the love of those concepts and characters has endured for 30 plus years, right? In some cases, like in the case of Cyberforce, the issue that you referenced is that's a story written by the winners of our new talent search, right? It's a one shot for that. But even people just think, knowing that, they're like, what about the series? It's like, keep your eyes open for that one. I love Cyberforce, obviously. But what we realized is that these are franchises that can survive hiatuses, which both, I'll use Witchblade and Darkness as our prime examples. I'll get to the Darkness in a minute, but for some reason. But these are characters in Sara Pezzini and Jackie Estacado that are constantly asked about. And they're not asked in some random weird ways. They're asking, specifically, where the hell are they? Right? We want these characters back. And where's the movies and where's the TV shows? Like, well, that's a little bit more difficult than making a comic book. But so we went, we love these characters. They're characters that people are just compelled to follow. I think by their design, and obviously with people who've been picking up, and thank you everyone, and there's a lot of you, and we appreciate that. Marguerite's new reimagining of Sara and the Witchblade. These are characters that just resonate, and the powers that we gave them, the universes that we gave them, also resonate. Because at their core, comics are not just about people, but it's about wish fulfillment, right? And that wish fulfillment can come in many different guises. It can come as just pure wonder. Oh my God, I can fly. Or it can come with some serious baggage, like what I always found more interesting. Jackie Estacado, the Darkness originally was created because I thought Superman was kind of dull, right? It's like, yeah, this guy lands on, in the middle of a cornfield and has the world's greatest freaking foster parents ever. He's the last survivor of Krypton. Wow, that's a pretty lucky dude. I didn't want Jackie to have that, right? And when we came up with Sara years ago with the Witchblade, we didn't want Sara to have that either, right? Because it's truly a blessing and a curse. And Marguerite really, really, really hits that hard. The Sara we meet is instantly recognizable to fans like yourself who've been following it, but it's also instantly obvious that she is a person that has seen shit, right? And we all have seen shit. If we've left the house, we've seen shit. Some people more than others. So that was always fascinating to me, and I think those elements, the fantasy elements, melded with the superheroics, led by relatable characters that you can sympathize with. I think that's been the key, specifically to Witchblade and the Darkness, right? Because you want to be these people. That's always key for me, is that you have to want to be them. No matter what ringer we pull them through, no matter how many times we crumble them up and throw them in the trash, you want the resiliency of how they bounce back. You want to be that person, right? You want to be that person who is triumphant in their own inner struggle, right? And I think people can relate to that because we all have our inner struggles. I don't trust anyone who doesn't, right? You're lying to yourself, right? So we admire people that just keep dusting themselves off and getting up and at least trying to do the right thing. And I think in the case of both Sara and Jackie, Jackie maybe a little bit more trouble to deal with, but Sara certainly, she's someone that struggles with inner demons, especially with the way Marguerite writes her. But she also has this strong moral compass, as sometimes not obvious as like a Captain America, right? Who, like Superman, just a person that naturally just always does the right thing, right? And if written well, can be, wildly entertaining. I think the Marvel version of Captain America is the best Captain America I've seen, right? With Chris Evans in there, Winter Soldier was fantastic, right? They made this Boy Scout interesting, right? And he was interesting because he just was committed to doing the right thing, like Christopher Reeve's Superman, in my mind, right? Just there's no need to describe any further than the fact that this is just a good human being, right? I get that. I like to put a little more nuance and more layers in there. So, handing over Sara to Marguerite, who understands that and humanizes them a little bit more, I think is really important. So yeah, people keep asking us, when do you bring these guys back? And we had to do it the right way, like we described earlier, making it friendly for new and old readers alike. So it worked, I think, spectacularly well with Witchblade. And if I can just throw a little hint out there, because we've already kind of said this before, but it will work, I hope, just as well with Darkness when he comes back next year. And I say hope because I'm writing that one myself, and it's very important to me that that again, as a fan and as one of the characters I love most in comics, that I do him right, and I think I am, because he's just so much fun to write. And like with what Marguerite's doing with Sara, it's fun to write these faulted human beings. In the case of Jackie Estacado, I find it interesting that his worst nightmare, the thing he fears most personally, is that deep inside, underneath it all, he's actually a good person. Yeah. Right? And that's what he has to fight against, is that fear. And that's what makes him so unique as a wielder of the darkness, and so much trouble for the darkness and the people who try to control that, is the fact that deep inside, he's actually an imperfect wielder of that power, because deep inside, he's actually a decent human being, completely betrayed by his nurture rather than his nature. Right. So that's the stuff that's compelling to me. And that's the stuff that, again, what I love so much about this new Sara, is that Marguerite just really brings that forward, and it's just there's so much depth to her, along with that incredibly fun 90s bombast. And I love this about Marguerite, because she just gets the fact that you don't throw that stuff away.
Yeah,
you can still have the depth of character. You can still have these wonderful human character moments, and then go kick some ass in a double page spread, right? Because it all works together, right? It's not just some random big double page spread that kicks some ass. It's like it's integral to the story. It's integral to her. It's integral to her growth and arc. And I'd love Marguerite to go in that a little bit further without spoilers too, in that Sara has a character arc, an ongoing, for as long as we can do it, character arc, where, like you and I, what she has now in her life, you don't just like fluff that off. It's like, oh, with great power comes great responsibility. I'm going to go sling some webs. That's wonderful. That's fun. But it gets more complicated than that. And I love this too. You don't slow anything down to do that, right? It's like, it's just drama, fun, action. Oh, wait a minute. I'm learning stuff about the human condition. Wait a minute, it's not supposed to happen. Wow, there's all this cool stuff, but I feel this other thing happening. It's like, oh, it's called relatability to your main character. So I love it. I love it. I'm just having the best.
I'm so happy.
That is so true. Like, I feel like I love DC. I love Marvel. Obviously, I collect a lot of that as well. And I view a lot of those characters, not all of them, but a lot of them as aspirational, right? There's a lot of hope. There is an outright goodness that you wish you could be, but because I'm human, I can't. So a lot of times, even though it's aspirational, it's not relatable. And then you have characters like a Sarah, or Jackie, and they're more relatable because I know what my flaws are. And when you see those same flaws in those characters, all of a sudden there is relatability. So I don't aspire to have all the issues that they have, but I could relate more to what they go through on a day-to-day basis than I can some of the other characters that I do love. And I think you need those, right? You need hope. You need that aspiration. You need to strive toward that. But you also have to have both feet on the ground while you're doing that. And the reality is, for most people, if they're honest, they're more Sarah and Jackie than they are Clark Kent, right? So, I mean, that's just how I see
It's
comics
true.
in general, and I love
Yeah.
both aspects of it. But this is relatable.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly what we're trying to do, what you just described right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're all on the same page with this one.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. All right. So, Marguerite, from a writer's perspective, as you're building out this story, like how far in advance are you in that story? Can you kind of talk about, like, are you try to stay 6 issues, 8 issues ahead of it? And my assumption from everything I've read, this will be an ongoing, which I'm really excited about. So this isn't like a 6-part or 12-part series.
No. Forever.
Which is really exciting.
She is locked into this.
I only bring it up because you mentioned the word the number 30 earlier, Mark, about that's issue 30, right? So, Marguerite, I mean, can you kind of talk about how far ahead you are, and then what is the secret to pacing as a writer?
Oh gosh. Okay, so 2 different questions. One, we are quite far ahead.
Good.
So yeah, we are doing quite well. I'm thrilled. I don't think I've ever been this far ahead on a series, you know,
But it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
Come on,
No,
it's just fun. And we have the maniac Giuseppe because he's the fastest artist I've ever worked with.
A machine.
So we're trying to keep up with him.
Yeah. And then the secret to pacing. The secret to pacing is that not all books are the same book and not all characters are the same character. And so, you know, over and over, I've said the word organic, and, you know, it really is like for Sarah, it's right now she is being overwhelmed. And so that should feel overwhelming to the reader. It should feel like, oh my God, I'm getting hit with it from all sides. And you should be going through, you know, the experience with her. I think that is, you know, one of the keys to that overflow of empathy that, you know, helps you grow with the character and, you know, why you want her to go through an arc. Yeah. So in the specificity, tailoring it to the character, which then tailors it to the story. So there isn't a one rule for all characters or one rule for all scripts.
I love it. I love it. And then Mark, so I'm in all these Reddit groups for the Darkness, for Witchblade, for Spawn, and I bring up Spawn because there is such a desire for Darkness, Jackie, and Spawn to come together for a good 4 or 5 issues just to create some sort of an arc. I don't know if that has been talked about. I know it's kind of been done before in the past, but man, we would love to see those 2 characters come together at some point. I don't know if you've ever thought of that or if that's even possible, but that would be absolutely I know. That would be so amazing. And I asked that because one of my good friends, Ty, he goes by the Spawn Hunter on
I've
Instagram.
seen that person. Yeah.
Oh, he's got, I mean, the greatest Spawn collection and from multiple countries. Like he has the full run from France, the full run from Peru, the Japanese. He gave me a Japanese one, and so I talked to him because the Image, I think, as you know, had this huge impact on comic book fans in general in the early 90s, right? We went from amazing storylines, don't get me wrong. Crisis of Infinite Earth was one of my favorites, the death of Superman, and then all of a sudden you all come over and create Image and it's glossy paper and like the action scenes are like hitting you, like you're ducking while you're reading. It was just something unique that you didn't experience before. And so I bring all this up because there's a group of us that talk a lot, and that is definitely one of the things. And the second thing, Mark, is your art on Conan, the Barbarian 135, King Conan. Is there any chance with Jim Zub and the amazing job that he's doing on the current Conan run and everything that he's doing at Titan to get a cover out of Marc Silvestri, just as a callback to your work that you did on Conan? I think would be spectacular.
Wow. Well, you'll have to remind me of the other part of the question. I'll answer that one first. Man, I kind of paid my dues on Conan, but I did grow up on fantasy and sci-fi. Those are my jam, and old school horror stuff. And Marguerite's a big horror fan too. More the modern stuff though, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
so those are my things, right? I got into comics kind of late in life, but yeah. So obviously Conan is fantasy. One of my biggest artistic influences, whether people see it or not, is Frank Frazetta. As far as fantasy goes, I don't think anyone can come even close to that guy. No matter how influenced you are by him, it's like night and day. So I grew up with that stuff. It was the first. I have an older brother and sister, and they were buying all the paperback books like Edgar Rice Burroughs, like Tarzan and stuff. And the first piece of art, my mom used to take me to the Art Institute in Chicago when I was a kid. And the first piece of art that I ever saw that moved me was a Tarzan cover done by Frank Frazetta when I was just young. And I think something clicked. It was like, oh, maybe I want to do that for a living. I don't know. I was just drawing on walls and stuff at home, so it didn't matter. But so maybe, I don't know. If I get a bug crawl up there in that area, I go, oh, I'd like to do a Conan. It's possible, and the other part of the question was, what was that again?
Spawn and Darkness coming together. That's got to happen, Mark.
Look, Todd's my buddy. Not just my partner, but he's my friend, right? And we have talked about things, and both the Darkness and actually Witchblade and Spawn.
Witchblade too.
They all share a supernatural universe. A supernaturally tinged universe. They don't share the universe yet. So that's you can tell your friends, or if they're going to see this on the threads, that be careful what you wish for, because it may happen. So, but right now, Marguerite and I are having some fun because we talked about this, but without being specific, I would encourage you and any fan of Witchblade right now is to keep picking that book up, because there's going to be a surprise coming up here. We lay a little Easter egg in issue 4 of what's coming. And again, it's just an Easter egg. But Marguerite and I have had a great time scheming about how we're going to bring this other character into the Top Cow universe via everyone's favorite wielder of the Witchblade. And we figured it out. And as fans, I can just tell you that we're super excited and we're geeking out. And we think that the readers are going to geek out as well. So keep your eyes peeled, because it's going to happen relatively soon. But yeah, I think we're going to freak people out. And what we have coming out in a little devious way will lead directly into the relaunch of the brand new Darkness #1. Which, like what we've done with Witchblade, is a jumping on point for new readers, and also paying respect and thanks to all the old time readers like yourself. Like, yes, this is Jackie Estacado, and this is his origin. Like Superman, you don't mess with the origin. He comes from Krypton, lands in the cornfield, and whatever, becomes Clark Kent. You don't mess with that. So we start off with that, and then after we establish this is Jackie, this is his origin that we all are familiar with, told in a little different way, we veer into brand new stories, right? And like I said, I'm writing this myself. I'm having a lot of fun. I love the Darklings. They show up a lot in this thing.
I love it.
and all your favorite characters, like in Witchblade, but with a new perspective on them. So there's characters that obviously are important to the Darkness universe, that people know and love, and they're coming back with some new relationships. One of the things I'm doing with Jackie is I'm loading him down with more, in the sense that he's got to go up against more, right? Because when you kind of think about it, well, if he was just fighting the mob, he could pretty much take over the mob overnight.
Yeah, like that.
So yeah, Yeah, like that. So I put things in his way now that he just can't do that. Right.
Love
Not
it.
that he's underpowered, but now his adversaries are overpowered. And I'm going to have a lot of fun with that. So, um, again, no specifics as to when it happens, but I would say for readers of Witchblade, just keep on reading. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
And I assume, Marguerite, you possibly might be able to write an issue or two where the darkness is part of Witchblade. See as though the darkness, right? I have it somewhere right here. First came in issue 10. I have it here somewhere, but right, I mean, it makes sense that Jackie and Sarah would come together at some point. I would think. I don't know. We'll have to guess. We'll have to see. But since you and I, Marguerite, your first issue that was handed to you was a Spawn 2. Mine was about 10 years earlier than that, but Spawn had a huge effect on me. Cyberforce, obviously, then Witchblade, the Darkness, like all of that. I don't mind what my mom probably would have freaked out if she knew what I was reading, because she thought I was just reading Spider-Man and Superman. And then I got into this dark space where I'm like, these characters are so awesome. And so just like you, Marguerite, I think we both became bigger fans of comic books when Image became Image. But boy, I hope you get a chance to write Jackie as well a little bit. We'll see, right? We'll see.
I guess search me.
All right. We don't have to answer any of that. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of mention, and I was talking to Lisa before we jumped on. She says there's some really exciting news coming up on issue 3 from a cover standpoint that you might be able to tease fans with if you want to.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. What do you want to kind of take that and maybe touch on it just a little bit?
Here's the thing, right? Like like we've said many times during this conversation, it's like we're fans, right? We just have fun, right? And looking behind you at all your stuff, all your collectibles, like you obviously you enjoy the hobby of collecting things, right? It's part of what we do. It's part of what we love about comics, right? And so, years and years ago, I did a cover for the X-Men with Wolverine nailed to an X, hence that, which, kind of became a thing, right? To the point where it's referenced in obviously in the Deadpool movie, right? So
kinda. I like how he said kinda. It kind of became a thing.
Yeah, like, which is cool. I haven't seen the Deadpool movie yet, but I've seen obviously online. He's there and he's looking miserable, and Deadpool just kind of goes, "You're too miserable," and he leaves. So we had some fun because some years ago I did an homage to myself, and we did a Witchblade cover of her, crucified, not nailed, but tied to a big W. So it's like, oh, I'm so clever, and we colored it up so that people got it. They got the joke. So what we're doing to commemorate, obviously that X in the movie, and the fact that people are just loving Witchblade. We're going to have some fun because again, we're fans and we like to have fun. And in the 90s, we had lots of fun with just covers and doing crazy ass things. So we're going to do something crazy ass here, and we're taking that W cover that I did of Witchblade, recoloring it. We're printing it at a special issue number 3 cover variant. I'm not sure on what the ratio is, but it will be available to those who want it. And it's going to be cool. It's going to be like old school gimmick covers, right? It's going to be fluorescent green ink on there, so you'll see it from across the mall if you want. It's just going to be like, it's just fun because again, we're just these geeky fans who just have a good time, right? It's like we're just like everyone who's buying these books. Just because we're making them doesn't mean we're not having fun, right? So we're gonna put that cover out there, and I think people are gonna go like, we get it. It's like, because again, we're just having a good time, right? So look out for that. It'll be fun. I think we're gonna start promoting that fairly soon so that people can see it. And again, it's going to be this really cool, bright neon, ink that, just like, oh yeah, that's so cool. Because we're geeks, right? It's like we can't help it.
I'll definitely try to get my hands on one of those. So we'll see how it comes out in the shops, but that is really exciting. Marguerite, congratulations on issue 1 so far that we have all gotten. Spectacular start to such an iconic character. So I think it came across so respectful and just enjoyable. I really, really enjoyed it. And Mark,
Stand on the shoulders
congratulations.
of giants, man.
And it just
Yeah,
gets better. It just gets better.
better.
It gets better, and just awesome. Love it.
Yeah. And then Mark, congratulations also to yourself and everything that's going on at Top Cow. Just really quickly, I mean, there's so many really cool things happening at Top Cow at let's see if I can find it real quick without spending too much time searching for it. But we had an amazing time at San Diego Comic-Con, and a lot of really cool things coming from Top Cow. My good friend, Mr. John Zerplatten, with Silver Lake is coming,
Nice.
which was a lot of fun to see John. He's such a cool guy. People don't know who John is. His impact on gaming is instrumental to the gaming industry. So you really should know who John is, because he's done a lot. And then obviously Matt, who is your president right here, big D&D players, had this story written since he was a young guy. I think he wrote this story 13 or 14 years old. So the Swords of Wintersea, which looks really cool. And then one of the, I think, I don't know where this ranks amongst Top Cow titles that are out, but Antarctica has been such a good read from Simon
It's a
Burks.
great book, right? Simon, such
good.
a great book.
So good. Yeah. So just a lot of really cool things happening. And then obviously we got that one shot of Cyber Force, which I have somewhere in this pile, but I won't waste your time looking for it. But congratulations on everything that's happening at Top Cow right now. And I think Marguerite and I both could say thank you, because we're both the fans that we are because of people like you, Mark, that really laid such an amazing foundation, took such a huge risk when you created an image. I mean, that could have gone so many different ways, and here you are 30 some years later still going strong, and creating a voice for creators to be able to tell their own stories, right? Because there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to the big two and how those characters should be treated today. You want to make them more modern, you want to kind of stay true to that, but the one constant is Image Comics providing creators the opportunity to tell the stories that they want to tell with the characters that they've created, and then to be able to own the IP that they created. You really set the foundation. Not that that was the first thing that happened in indie comics. There was indie comics happening before that. But boy, the way Image exploded, you could see the impact that it's had on independence, even to this day. Just go to Kickstarter and see how many people are creating a comic book. I love it. You're getting some of the most unique stories that you could never get reading Superman, because it wouldn't make sense for those stories to happen in Superman. That's not a negative. It just wouldn't happen there. But here they are on the pages of independent creators. And I know, Marguerite, you've been super successful with some of your own creator-owned properties as well. So on behalf of the fans that I interact with, thank you, Mark, for everything that you've done for the industry. And Marguerite, I'm so happy that you're part of Top Cow and that you're writing this title. But I just want to say thank you, and thank you for spending some time with me today. I can't tell you, big fan. I really appreciate everything that's happening at Top Cow, and you could count me in as ensuring that Witchblade is in my box. So whenever the next issue is, all I got to do is walk in and grab it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those kind words, beyond kind words. And I think I said this before, but we're a team here. We couldn't do this without you. It's that simple. Image wouldn't have been Image without your support, and we will be eternally thankful for that. And yes, I think for me, out of all the things that we've been involved in, the legacy of creating a safe space for creators, I think is the thing that all of us Imagers are most proud of. Because no, we did not create that. As you pointed out, there was independent comics before. All we did is we mainstreamed the idea. That's it. We made it safe, right? We took the risk factor down, and because they were waiting, they were all there, right? And obviously, they're still doing it with us, and we're eternally grateful. But again, thank you so much for your support and your feedback and your time as well. Because again, without people like yourself, lovers of comics, what we do, I don't know what you do, Marguerite, but I'm not qualified for anything else. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. You both have a great rest of your week, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Marguerite.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.